All right, everyone good?
And it was good to see you this morning. Try how practice go.
Oh, it was great. I mean,
I like the 4-block technique. Was that what you guys were working on? A little of that right there, where you'd have two balls up and you'd have the blocker would shift and then move back to the other ball. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a little bit of everything we're going on with right now. I appreciate the run by.
Dude, I'm fired up because, like, as you saw on my Instagram, I was breaking down the points, and honestly, it wasn't as good as I made it out to be for you the first time I talked to you. So I wanted to kind of apologize that I kind of had it in my head a little different, because even though you did have 5/17s, only 3 of them are technically replaceable. So,
that's exactly why I was excited to have you on the podcast. We have Ed Keller here, ladies and gentlemen, on the podcast, and. Dude, yeah,
hey, you're not recording yet, Travis.
Oh, yeah, we're on.
It is recording.
We're on,
you are
yeah.
recording. Oh,
that
shoot.
was Ed. That was the perfect intro.
I'm stupid.
Yeah.
Okay, try. Go ahead. Try.
I knew we interrupt. So I was like, yeah, let's just keep it rolling. This is getting too good. But no, when we were we've been chatting a bunch over the last 2 days. A way better grasp on the landscape of beach volleyball nationally than anyone else out there. And it's not that our fans of our sport aren't interested. It's just really hard to figure out. And you're the one guy who understands everybody else and gets the numbers and is fascinated by all of it. So I was like, yes, we got to have Ed on the show.
Hold on, I'm coming back. I just froze up, but I'm coming back. Okay,
you're
keep
back
going.
now.
I'm back.
Basically, you just helped me understand the situation better, because I'm one of those people who doesn't really get, I mean, I can sit down and pull up the spreadsheets. I don't like looking at it too much, but it's good to understand what the landscape is and where you stand. And I just figured all the fans want to know it too, but they don't understand it. So why not bring Ed on the show and let's talk volley, because you have so much experience as a fan of the sport and a player.
Yeah, thanks, Tri. Well, here's the thing is that from my perspective, I'm a math science guy. So, my background, being a physics major from Brown University and working in science my whole life, but thinking about volleyball from a more analytical numbers standpoint that necessarily like you as players might not want to get that deep into. But for me, having been pretty much a very mediocre volleyball player, and that this is something that it gets me excited, is that I may not be able to play volleyball at a high level, but I can think about like statistically where players are or points wise where you are. And that is really exciting in an Olympic year, because especially for USA men and women, you guys are all in a dogfight right now that could go any direction. And we've seen it historically. Like I remember Rosie and Jake's journeys, being close friends with Sean for a long time, looking at 2008, especially 2012. Well, I guess 2008 was closer. 2012, they were really dominating. But 2008, it came down to the last tournament. And they're especially you got poor Nick and Furby too in that 2012, and then basically Furby just retired after that. I mean, it can be that close. I mean, I know how close it can be from 16, but this is it's that change in the sport. I was just talking to someone the other day. Funny thing, one of the older guys who hangs out and plays with us here at 16th Street in Hermosa, where I live. He was talking about that transition in '96. When Sinjin and they all started building that international tour and we're going to put this in the Olympics the first time. Of course, in '92 they did sort of a test, right, with some stuff, and then they had the Goodwill Games, I think, with Carl Henkel and Sinjin playing, and then in '96 we got to have a full Olympic sport with beach volleyball. So how did that change how players approached the game, and how the sport was marketed? And how the sport was seen from a fan perspective, because I remember, and I'm in my mid 40s, so I remember being in high school in the early 90s and just being like, this sport's incredible. I would go and watch this party atmosphere where big, strong guys were playing amazing volleyball, but there was that beer drinking, bikini wearing kind of aspect to it. And I know that it still has that, but also the gravitas, the seriousness of the Olympic journey has sort of taken the attention of the players and the fans, I think in a positive way. But other people, some of the older guys here at least, are hypothesizing that maybe that took away from the sponsorship level, because they aren't seeing, like the Bud Lights aren't saying, if I put my beer behind this, it's a big party, because it isn't as much anymore. And as a result, the players have gotten a heck of a lot better and much more technical and much stronger and much quicker, because the training is so much more serious than it used to be. So I don't know, there's so many different angles to what the Olympic journey does with volleyball. I personally think it's positive, but there are older players that I'm sure we all bump into on the beach, or older fans who may see it in a different way, right?
It's funny because like every old school player we have on the podcast is always like, the Olympics are the worst thing that's ever happened to the AVP, because you have to go to the FIVB, you have to skip AVP events to qualify for the Olympics. So in a way they're right, but I also think in terms of St. John's goal when he was trying to put volleyball into the Olympics, it wasn't to make the AVP bigger, it was to grow the game as much as he could. Right. So, and in that way, it's worked tremendously. I mean, the FIVB is huge, and you got teams from Norway, and me and Adam signed up for the Doha One Star, and the main draw is 5 teams from Qatar, 2 teams from Oman, 1 from Sweden. Like Oman has 2 teams in the main draw, and so right? Like Oman, like they're not going to field an indoor team, but you only need 2 players. So like the FIVB, it's taken beach volleyball to a level in terms of global participation to a level that the AVP could have never reached, even though it might have hurt the AVP's bottom line. St. John's goal was like, this game is too big to keep to ourselves. Let's spread it. And it's worked. I mean, volleyball is huge around the world.
It's worked well. And I've gone to about, since I started going to international tournaments, just out of interest, maybe, well, I went to one in 2003 that doesn't really count. Rosie and Larry Witt and I went down to just, it was like, there was so like my whole life, I've known that I love watching volleyball since I was about 16, and I've just been trying ways to sneak in and watch more amazing volleyball. So at one point I'd be like, oh, you guys are going to a country quota in Brazil? This was, Larry Witt and Sean Rosenthal in 2003, when they were starting to be like a good young team. And I said, do you mind if I come along and just sort of help you guys warm up? And I'll do anything, like, just let me be there with you. And so they're like, sure. So we flew down there, and in those days, country quotas were on site, as they were most of the time until recently, right? So you fly down there and they play Furby and Casey in the first round and lose in 2. And then, but we booked our tickets for the whole tournament. So we figured, okay, let's just hang out. We were staying in this hostel right by the beach in Salvador, in Bahia, in Brazil. And it was really beautiful area, just pristine, warm. So we were watching all these amazing teams. And at that time, it was like Steinmetzger was playing with Dax. And I think it was like Fenoy was playing with Kevin Wong. And so some good like historical AVP teams. But then in the World Tour, you had Harley, and you had like Baracete Conde from Argentina, who were very strong. They may have won that tournament, so I remember it. But just so that start for me, just I realized with the international game, like you were saying, Travis, it changed like everything for me. Because I'd gone to AVP tournaments, they're amazing. Yeah. I mean, it's a great product. The players are passionate. They really bring it in the AVP in terms of the fan appeal, because they play to the crowd, which I love. Whereas international is different. They aren't necessarily as much of that, but the quality of play is just, it's insane. Right now, I watch international qualifiers and I go, most of these teams on a given day could probably compete on Sunday in an AVP. And they're in the international qualifier. And it's phenomenal. And what you said about spreading the game around the world, I think, smaller countries like Latvia, this is their opportunity to get an Olympic medal, which they did, right? And so in 2012, you have this sort of unknown Latvian team getting a bronze medal with Plavins and Jānis Smedens. And it's just that whole country. I mean, that Latvian beach volleyball contingent are basically the superstars of their country now. Like Alex Samoilov is on like the front cover of magazines, and like it's unbelievable, because that's their sport that they know that they can get an Olympic medal in. So, and you think about these countries, these are not necessarily, Australia, Brazil, USA, beach destinations around the world. These are places where they maybe were former indoor players, or maybe there's some connection, connection to a family member. In the case of Alex, of course, his dad sort of runs that whole group, right? In the case of Norway, I think it's the parents of Christian and Anders, who were great players themselves. So you see this sort of transition of these European nations sort of taking over, right? I guess it's not shocking if you look at the time and effort they put into it, and the dedication to their craft and what resources their countries put behind them, right? It's not that
Right.
shocking, but at the same time, Brazil and us, we've always kind of owned volleyball. So it's interesting to see that shaken up, right? I mean, especially for you guys, I'm sure.
Yeah, I would love to see like a Ryder Cup style thing where you get like Brazil, South America versus Europe versus North America. I think that would be such a cool competition because like, if you combine the US and maybe like the top 2 teams from Canada, like we could compete with the top 5 teams from Europe and and Brazil. I mean, they could have probably 10 teams compete at that level.
Yeah. Right. You got Brazil. I don't know if Argentina has much more. Chile, the Chilean guys could join, right?
Yeah.
You could, I mean, it's weird how Europe's gotten so strong. I mean, just, and the Brazilians are right there and we're right there, but we're sort of trying to figure out, at least on the men's side, where the younger players are going to come from. Although, isn't there was just something about an indoor Stanford setter, tall guy, right?
He moved into my old apartment. So dude.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we had this like beach volleyball circle of life. So Stafford moved out of his place on 4th Street in Hermosa. So then he was like, hey man, moving out if you want it. The rent's been controlled for 7 years. So we're like, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
We'll move in. So as soon as Stafford left, we moved in. And then James Shaw called me and was like, hey, heard you guys are moving. Can I take your room? So I said, sure. So James Shaw and I don't think you've met him, but he's like 6'10" indoor setter from Stanford, played in Italy overseas, I think. Like monster man, and gonna be ridiculous pretty soon.
Wow.
And he wants to play beach.
Yeah, he's making the transition.
How old, Travis? About 24-ish, 25
I think
maybe?
him and Andy Benish are like the exact same. So it's just like huge, about the same age, similar athleticism, except James is probably a little less raw than Andy was when he first came out.
Wow, that's something.
So if he puts in the work, like he'll be ready to go.
Yeah.
he'll be good.
Well, and that's the key, right? Is that I think it's interesting when you talk about putting in the work, and our players all train very diligently. I remember the first time Brazil 2003, Rosie and Larry and I go down, whatever, we come back, we had a great time. And then 2011, I got to World Champs in Rome. Because Amy, my wife, is like, you know what, you love volleyball. Why don't we go travel and see some volleyball tournaments? And I was like, wow, this is obviously a keeper. And I'm like, thank you, honey. Yes, let's do this. And so we fly into Barcelona. We rent a car. We drive to Rome from Barcelona. And the thing Amy always loves to tell me about that trip is when we got to World Championships in Rome, there's no parking in Rome. It's basically impossible. We had rented this car for the week. Well, what the heck are we supposed to do? So we drive into the FIVB tournament site. We drive into where all the officials and players and everything park for the week. And the guy doesn't speak English. He just looks at us kind of funny. And Amy just points to me and goes, he's a player. And they, oh, okay, just park over here. And so we just park our car for the week in the FIVB tournament site and just go find our Airbnb and come back and watch tournament of the week. Well, you see these great players, Brazil and all over the world. So I'm thinking to myself, a little about how they train and what they do. So I was watching some of the Brazilians train about 6 months after that. I was in Brazil, Amy and I decided to go to Rio just for no good reason. And there was a guy named Chicao, actually. Maybe you've heard of Chicao? Chicao's a coach. He used to coach players here.
Okay.
Probably 2005 to 2010 or 12 or so, he was coaching here. He was a good Brazilian player, but he was like many of them, they came up here to coach for a while. And then he went back and he's been hired by a number of, now he's coaching the girls from Colombia. So, but they're at some training camp in Europe or something. So in any event, we go to visit him and I'm watching the Brazilians train. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know how they do it. Like Pedro's training with Marcio that winter because they were thinking about playing together. They train 3 hours in the morning, go get some food, lift, come back, train 3 hours in the afternoon. Apparently there's a nap in there somewhere from what I was told. But it's like, and they do that 6 days a week in the heat on Rio, where I was sitting in a chair watching them sweating profusely just from like nothing, right? So I think that seems amazing in terms of building players, capability, but I think there's a burnout element to the Brazilian system as well, because you see players like Pedro Cunha, who was a great player, retire before he hits 30 because his body falls apart and he has 3 surgeries, right? So there's this interesting question I always think about to myself is the Europeans, the Brazilians, some of these foreign players stress incredibly intense practice schedules, but most of their players are very young. And our players are more veteran typically, right? And have a lot more experience, but also, know how to manage their bodies better. So they only need very specific training. And it's kind of like watching Casey Patterson train, with Chase again right now, which I'm kind of excited about because, obviously Chase is one of my buddies. And I was really stoked. And Casey's very specific, right? He's like, I'm 40. I know exactly what I need to get in shape to play. I don't need to go train 5 hours a day every day, right? That would just kill him.
Yeah.
So it's, I think that's the interesting part about our system and how successful the Americans have been over the years. I would say with the exception, 2019 was kind of an aberration. Our guys, all of you guys didn't necessarily medal as often as we as fans were looking forward to. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen again. I just think it was just a tough year because when Norway is taking over, it doesn't leave a lot of room for other people, right? I don't know what you think about that, Tri.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it's one of the first years where obviously Phil is usually the one getting on the podium multiple times throughout the year. I mean, I think people would be surprised if you told them when Jake and Taylor first partnered up that it would take them that long to get a medal, just a medal on the world tour. And then, me and Trev, I mean, we kind of knew it was going to be a progression because we are split blocking for the first time and it was going to take a little bit of time,
and it was your first season back. I mean, it was really your first season back. So, I mean, I think you guys progressed really well. Yeah, you're right. Phil had 1 silver at Doha the whole year, 1 podium. That's unheard of. I don't think I can remember a season Phil didn't have at least 1 win. And that's not to say he's any different than he's ever been. It's just, I think the level of volleyball is getting so strong worldwide. The size and the quickness, it's a lot like point guards in basketball, right? I mean, Ben Simmons at 6'10" is gnarly. But like, when was there ever a 6'10" point guard when we were younger, or at least in when I was younger?
Well, there was like a Magic Johnson at 6'8", and he was like a freak and dominating.
Right. That was him. That was the one. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I forgot. I block him out because I come from Boston. But yeah, I get it. That's a joke. That's a joke. Right? I don't want to think about my poor Larry Legend getting beat down in '87, and then his back was gone. And anyway, but yeah, that's the thing. And so as we move forward as a federation, and I think good things are happening in USA Volleyball. The monthly stipend for players, the travel stipend, all this stuff helps those top 3 or 4 teams, right, compete. I think, if we can see more events and proliferation of things for the next level of players, that will certainly help too. And without the college game for men on the beach side, obviously, that's going to make it harder to develop young male players. Yeah.
I feel like at least the position I'm in, I've put in my, 7 years now, 6-7 years now.
Wow.
Only 31, but like the way that it's progressed is like there hasn't really been many people behind my age that have proven that they can win. And
are you really that old?
I'm 31.
Oh my God. Can't believe it. Actually.
I'm a vet. I'm a real vet. Trevor's 31 as well. I think I'm 31.
So Taylor just turned 29, right?
29, yeah.
He just turned
Taylor's
29.
the young gun.
He's
the only one that's proven that he can win medals behind us, and then like the
old guard.
Theo and Kame and them would be.
Yeah,
they're definitely contenders.
Yep.
Other than the guys who are potentially retiring, it's going to be a whole different landscape, and we're going to have to carry that torch. And I mean, for the U.S., it's not an option to not bring in any medals in a year,
Right.
So we need to. That's our goal, is to be those guys for the U.S.
That's right.
Because even when you think about it, I mean, you mentioned Theo and Kame; they're both older than you too. And when you think about, because last week someone asked what the 2024 partnerships might look like, and really the only people who are in that discussion are also older than you, like Chase Budinger.
Right. Right. Chase is 32. He'll be 33 in June or something, right?
What's funny
I got 5
is
years on him.
Our women are the complete opposite. All of our talent, except for April and Alex, is really young. Like Kelly Kolinsky is probably will be the next oldest going into Paris. And she's what, like 27, 28? So she's the veteran of the women, and she would be like the baby of the men. So our women's pipeline is like, we're good.
It's amazing. It's incredible how good our women are, and consistently across those top 4 teams, they can all medal in FIVB full field events with no issue at all. I mean, they're strong. Of course, Carrie is kind of a wild card because she is a bit older. This is definitely her last run, I would assume, but I don't know for sure. You never know, like with Carrie, she might just decide that she can just keep going because she hasn't really slowed down at all. I was out at a few of those China events a couple years ago because I'm one of those weird people who actually enjoys China. I might be the only person in the world who likes going to China, I think.
First person on this podcast to say so.
I found a couple of interesting things. And first of all, I'm kind of an unusual guy to start with because I don't eat meat. So that makes it really hard to be in a place like China. But apparently our players can't eat the meat there anyway, typically. Right. So I guess it's not so weird. But I found a lot of interesting stuff when we were there the last time. Number one, the bullet trains are insane. You know, number two, that there's like amazing Buddhist temples and things of that nature. Like there's cultural stuff that you can kind of dive into if you're not playing and training, like if you're just a fan like me. And so getting out there, I was watching Brooke and Carrie the last time, and it was like, holy moly, like Carrie is insane. Like she's blocking, hitting on two, like serving tough, like passing more than half the court, like, and she's got to be over 40, like right 43, I think, or something. Yeah. So, I mean, where does she slow down? It's like the Jake Gibb story to me. Like Jake Gibb to me, and I've watched him since, he played with Mike Daniel in qualifiers, and then he was playing with Adam Jewell when he first and I don't know if you guys ever met Adam Jewell. Does that name like ring a bell to either of you guys?
Yeah, he won Austin with Jake.
I heard it a lot.
Yeah, but dude, he had the best ooh after he hit the ball of anyone. He had the best ooh after he hit the ball. Nobody could bounce higher than him, and he had the best like celebration noise that anyone's ever heard. So he was a baseball pitcher from South High School in Torrance, and then he played volleyball on the beach, and then he played volleyball at El Camino. But his arm was insane. But he was one of those guys that just, oh, okay, this Jake Gibb guy looks good. Let's play for a year. And that was the only win I think Adam had. And then Jake jumps into Steinmetzger, and then he jumps into Rosie. It's an interesting progression watching a guy like Jake, because to me today, he's better than he was then. He was the MVP of the AVP in 2005. He looks better, much better now. And he'll tell you that too. He says his game is much sharper. And I think fitness-wise, he's better at 43. So that's the most amazing thing about, right? I mean, so don't worry about your age. Just do what you can control. Right. So it doesn't matter. I mean, there'll come a day when things break down physically, depending on your history. Right. So guys who played a lot more indoors are probably going to break down quicker. I mean, I know, there's pain in our bodies from whatever we've done. But for guys like Jake, for guys like Phil could keep going for sure. I mean, there's no question. Right. But guys like that have had such a long journey. I think they've decided family. We've done this, we've accomplished, we want one more run, and then it's time to hang it up. And I respect that as well, because that's what they're, in their heart is what they want to do. So, but you can see, I watched Jake at practice out here. Like, it's just, dude, he reaches so high. His technique is so clean. The way his hand and arm angles work on attack is precise. He sees the defense, and he knows how to move the ball around. I mean, it's magic watching him play. And it's weird because I said to Richie the other day, was it Richie or someone else who stand next to me? I go, is he really only 6'7"? Right? Like Jake Gibb looks way bigger when he's playing than 6'7", because there's other guys who are 6'7" who don't seem as big as Jake when they're blocking and hitting. Right? Like that's something I was thinking about. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. Go ahead.
I wonder how we would think about Jake Gibb's name today if Phil wasn't around all those years, because Jake's been the most consistent. Like no one's even really touched. I've been trying very hard, but no one's really like taken his spot as the second best blocker in the U.S. Since I've been watching the sport. And it's funny that you say earlier that he's better now the last few years. Like I don't have that perspective. I never played. I watched maybe a little bit back then. Jake wasn't the guy I watched. I watch the Hawaiian guys, and
like Lambo.
Oh,
dude.
You don't know.
Lambo was one of the most tragic. Right. Lambo was so incredible. He was fit. So, okay. So one of my favorite times of volleyball to think about, other than coming in and learning the sport little as a young fan, in the 90s, you have this talent level, right? With Karch and Kent and Jose. Your coach, Jose Loyola, was a freak of nature. I was standing at the Manhattan Open in '95. So here I am. I'm out of high school now. I'm in my first year in college, and my buddy from high school was Kent Steffens' first cousin. So he goes, "Let's go out and stay with Kent's parents for a week, and we'll go watch the Manhattan Open, whatever." So I come out and I'm watching Jose warm up at the Manhattan Open in '95, and he's hitting balls that are bouncing sideways up the whole grandstand. Like it's not like he hit it to the end line and it bounced up the deep way. He hit from the right side sideways in warmups, and it would go like halfway up the grandstand sideways. It was like, I know guys today they're very physical, but guys back then were all about bouncing in warmups. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Exactly. Guys don't practice that anymore. It's probably a good thing because it's not necessarily that useful for your game. But like guys like Rosie and Loyola and guys back then, they were guys that were just crushing balls. Ridiculous. Anyway, so getting back to like moving on to that next zone. So that's like one time period that I think is really iconic. 96 in that era was just the peak of the AVP from the old days, right? You have the Olympics and everything. Then you get to this 2004, 5, 6, right? Now that's kind of the growth and the strength of that next AVP. And there was a moment when Lambo, right? Your guy, Mike Lambert from Hawaii, from Punahou, Stanford, right? All that. And Phil was an up-and-coming young blocker who had won his first tournament with Nick in Austin, right? And he had third in Hermosa, and everyone was kind of talking about it. And then you had Jake, who had just been the MVP. And so these guys are trying to figure out who they're going to play with, because all of them, Lambo playing with Karch, and Karch was getting older, right? Jake was playing with Stein, but he was thinking there was bigger things in store for him, although Stein was incredible. So it's kind of a weird thing there. Oh, because Stein went with Lambert, right? That's the whole thing. It was kind of like Lambert was the king of that era. Like everyone saw him as the best blocker, better than Phil, better than Jake, even though Jake was the MVP. So that's what I'm saying is, your guy Lambo was, and he had the injuries afterwards that basically ended his career. And it was a shame because he was the flying Hawaiian, right? Yeah. I mean, that guy was a monster. So, how that all goes down though, right? How that all goes down is the most interesting to me about how the sport works, because it's all about partnerships and how they can change and how that can affect the future of the sport. Because Todd Rogers getting Phil, there's a very, maybe you guys know the story, maybe you don't, about how Phil asked Rosie what he was doing in 2005, the next year, before Todd asked him to play. You guys haven't heard this? Well, no. I mean, I try to keep the stories not to be too secret, giving away too many secrets I'm not supposed to talk about. But Rosie and I have been tight for a long time, so I guess he won't mind me sharing this one. And I'm sure he would say it. Okay, so essentially before in Chicago that year, so there was a King of the Beach after at the end of the season. Before that was Chicago, which is always on Labor Day, right? And Phil and Nick were playing, and Rosie was playing Larry Witt still, and Jake was playing with Stein, and Lambo was playing with Karch. And you had Phil asking Rosie, hey, what are you thinking about doing next year? You thought about who you're getting a partner. And Rosie tells him, I'm waiting to see what Lambo's going to do. That's kind of how that went down, because all the best defenders were asking Lambo, what are you doing next year? And then once he picked Stein, then everyone else would kind of go to the next blocker and say, okay, what are you doing next year? And so it's funny because once Stein and Lambo committed, okay, Jake, who was the MVP, approached Rosie after they had their King of the Beach, the Rosie line, which is obviously one of the most famous moments. I was standing right under the play. So where the camera angles, I'm right behind that. And I was sleeping in my car because, that's what we used to do back then. We just drive tournaments and you didn't have any money. So you just slept in your car or whatever, or you found a room, someone had an extra bed or a floor spot or whatever. And And I remember watching that and just being like, wow, Sean's really emerged. Because it's funny, I'm in Hermosa in 97, right? When my parents moved here, my dad was from Manhattan Beach, and when he grew up here and he went to Miracosta, and he used to tell me about the courts at Marine Street when he was a kid in the 50s and all this cool stuff. Like you'd give the lifeguard the quarter and they'd give you the ball for the day, and you'd give it back at the end of the day and you get your quarter back. There was only 2 courts at Marine in the 50s, he was saying. But anyway, so they move out here to get back here. And I kind of told them when I graduated college, I'm going to California. And they said, okay, we'll move there. So I'm at 8th Street and I meet Rosie, 97, in that summer. And I just figured, this guy is ridiculous. I'm just going to drive around and watch him play in AAA tournaments. Because it's like, what do you have to do on a weekend? You know, you're either going to play some volleyball or you're going to watch some volleyball. But at that point, it was like, I'm seeing something like Rosie at 18 years old was the craziest thing you've ever seen, because his quads were like exactly as big as they are today, but he weighed like 170 pounds, right? So you can only imagine a 6'4", 170-pound guy with quads like the size of like, you know, a side of a ham, right? Like his gigantic like ham hock legs propelling his very skinny upper body like 40 plus inches in the air. And he levitated, you know, and just did crazy stuff. So watching Rosie all those early days, I remember driving to Dana Point, Corona Del Mar. I drove to Newport and watched him play. I drove to Zuma and watched him play. Zuma up in Malibu. You know, these did AAAs all up and down the court. I'm sure they still do all up and down the coast. And he was playing with this guy named Brandon Smeltzer. And like just after Dale Smith, who was kind of the older guy that taught Rosie how to play volleyball, had kind of relinquished it. Okay, you need to go find a better partner because you've gone as far as I can take you. And so Brandon played for a while, and then it was just interesting getting to that point where, you know, he's now in 2005 with the Vegas line, basically one of the best defenders in the country, right? So in that period of time, it was amazing to watch his ascension, you know, it was.
Yeah, it's fun to see him back out too, healthy with the shoulder, playing again.
Oh, dude, him and Avery look like they're maybe gonna give it a try. I think. I mean, that's the latest. Yeah,
it's funny.
I mean,
Avery can't seem to make up his mind. He's like, all right, I'm transitioning, I'm defending, playing right side, and then Rosie's like, run away, and Avery's like, all right, blocking, and I'm playing left side. Again.
I know. Well, he could throw Rosie either way, whatever he feels more comfortable with, right? Well, you guys remember when Rosie and Phil first got together in 2013, right? I mean, this is now within our more recent memory. So it was the most interesting part about that was with Mike Dodd coaching them, and through that first winter when they decided to play together, who was going to play what side? Both had only played left. So the first thing they said was, Phil, you're the best player in the world. Basically, you're going to play the right.
Yeah.
And let's see how that goes. And it was a couple of interesting things happened. First of all, Phil's ridiculous wherever you put him. I mean, so they were good. Yeah. You know, they won events. They won their first event together. And I was there in Fuzhou in China. And it was that was the first time I went to China. I was just like, okay, Phil and Rosie are playing together. I don't care what it takes. I'm going to go watch a couple of their tournaments, right? The first one, because I have to see what this is going to look like. And they win that. And funny thing, Jake and Casey win the Grand Slam in Shanghai the next week.
Yeah.
And Rosie ends up getting a 9th in that and losing a close match to Ricardo and Alvaro, right, to get knocked out. You remember how good Alvaro is. I mean, oh my God.
Yeah. That guy. Rosie six-packed him. I thought he got knocked out.
Oh, that was in that. Yeah, that was in that tournament.
And he froze and his hands went like this and he fell straight to his back. I was like, oh, Rosie killed someone.
That was in that tournament. That was, yeah.
You gotta watch that.
That's a good highlight. It's on YouTube, I think, still. So anyone who wants to check that out, go find that. I think that was the Fuzhou and not the Shanghai. But yeah, that was one of those two tournaments. But USA came out of the gate that year and you and Johnny were playing together, right? So, or was that, no, you didn't start till 2014 or did you start in 2013?
No, what year was that? I don't even remember. So Shanghai, were
you guys out there at that one in 2013, or do you start in 2014 together? I don't.
Oh, sorry, I started the year after. I was on.
Yeah, you were in 2014. Yeah, because you were with like Jeff Carlson or maybe like other people. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just trying to.
You were still getting ready, but dude, Johnny picking you up, and just because. Here's the thing, right? I think a guy like John Hyden knows what it takes to win, and he sees the guy like you with all the pieces in place, and he says, we can win. And you did. And you guys were amazing together. And it's one of those like things, like only 2 teams get to go to the Olympics from the USA, right? It's just one of those things, right? I'm sure you still, this is it though. This year's your redemption, because I'm all in for Monster Hydro and Try and Trevor. I love you guys. I'm excited. And Jose, your coach, I think this is going to be a great journey. Just thinking about all this international volleyball stuff and how, we can make, and you guys saw that article about the investment last night, right?
Yeah, I saw that. It's insane.
Travis, you know what we're talking about?
No.
Someone, I forgot the name of the company. What was it? Was it a VC, CVC, or some company just invested $300 million in the FIVB?
Whoa, I work for them now, so maybe I'll have to ask them about a little race. Yeah, so try.
They work with Formula One, right? And rugby, and they've already gone into those sports, and they've seen I only read one article, but they've seen the potential of volleyball. They look at the numbers and how it's one of the biggest sports in the world in terms of the amount of people playing.
It's the fourth.
Volleyball.
It's the 4th highest participated sport in the world, and so they see that and they say, hey, we can make a relatively modest investment comparatively with Formula One or rugby or whatever, and have a big effect on the sport. And I know that's primarily an indoor volleyball investment, but I know the way the FIB works, that'll trickle down into beach for sure, and affect the beach game as well. And especially with the launch, hopefully, of that new system next year, if that can really get moving, and this can be maybe some of the catalyst for that. So
we need that new system.
No, it is exciting. It is. It's like the sport is exciting for those fans like me who are so into it. I can't understand why people don't all love watching volleyball, right? Because to me, the athleticness, the quickness, the agility, the hand-eye coordination, the techniques, it's a incredibly high level sport in terms of what you need to do to be good at it, and you're doing it in sand, right? So so that brings a couple different things. It brings, you can see the incredibly strong and toned men athletes and the incredibly strong and fit female athletes. And that, the beauty of sport and the beauty of muscular bodies comes out. And I'm not trying to be weird or anything, but, as fans, you want to put something on TV that's marketable. And the men and the women who play volleyball, I think, are all very marketable as athletes. Yeah. And it's not like Formula One where you're just seeing a car with a helmet sticking out of it, which still is a huge sport worldwide. But I think, and then you have the fact that a lot of people do play volleyball. So the idea is that I know indoors does very well and there's plenty of money there. Does it have something to do with the fact that not as many people are familiar with the beach game, that why it's harder to get the beach game to resonate? That's what I'm wondering.
I think that would be probably the biggest thing, because you can play volleyball indoors anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, right? And most people do in gym class or whatever. When you watch it on TV, you understand how difficult it can be, or you understand what it's like to jump off indoors. But my brothers, for example, we never played beach volleyball growing up. So my older brother had no idea how hard it was to jump on sand until we went out to Myrtle Beach. He's like, let's pepper. And so we were peppering. He's like, it's so hard to move. And you can understand it on a conceptual level. It's hard to move in sand, but until you go to jump, you can't grasp how hard it is to jump at, especially deep sand. That I feel like a lot of times people watching on TV who've never played can't fathom how difficult it is to do what these guys are doing.
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult. I played indoors for club at Brown, right, when I was there. And I remember coming out here for the summer when my parents had moved here and been like, oh, I'm going to play some beach in Hermosa with basically the deepest sand in the world that I didn't know about yet. And I just remember just struggling through that first month of trying to figure out how to get my footwork going and not trying to broad jump to hit a ball and all this stuff. And then what's interesting is, and I'm sure Travis, because you played up probably a lot of indoors, did you play at Maryland?
I played basketball.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I thought for some reason I thought you must have played volleyball. Okay, no. Never mind. But because Maryland had a good club program for volleyball. In any event, they were there was a guy who transferred from Maryland to Penn State in '94 or '95 who was a freaking superstar. I wish I could remember his name off the top of my head, but Maryland won the club national championships, I think. But in any event, so just that transition, that idea of coming from beach to beach. Now, what you said too about deep sand, I think a lot of like casual players like me who don't realize that Hermosa maybe is the deepest, and Huntington is much easier to jump out of, right? I know you guys know that in Long Beach. It's like I got my AAA, the only one time I got it was in Corona del Mar. And they have those funny courts that are the wrong way with the metal poles, right? Yeah. And that's a little bit deeper than say a Huntington, but a bit easier than Hermosa. Yeah. So I remember the first, like, and I got lucky, and like Rosie is 2000. He's kind of my boy, and he just goes, hey, let's play a AAA tournament together. He had just started qualifying for AVP tournaments, but he had like a weekend off because AVP only had 6 events that year. And I go, well, you can't really say no to that. So we go drive down there, and the first 3 swings I just kind of over jumped the ball and hit it out of bounds. I'm like, and then we end up going on a win streak and doing pretty well. But it's interesting to think about those differences in surface. So like where Tri's playing in the World Tour, there aren't very many real beaches, right? Very few. But that doesn't mean that when you don't go to Stade in that stadium court, it isn't super deep, right? Am I right? It's super deep on that stadium court in Stade, right, Tri?
Yeah, I've had one of the toughest matches in my life on that court.
Tell us a little about it.
That was when we played Saxton and Schalk in 9th place game or something like that. And when we went 3, it was like dead wind, altitude, and I think we had played a match before that too. Long story short, we win it. It's like me short serving me and us short serving Ben, just going back and forth, and we're both blocking. We win it, and then turn around and we have to play the 5th place match against Samoilov Smedins in like 2 hours.
Oh my God!
I played that match. We lost, and I literally couldn't move that night. Like it was before IVs were illegal. I was on IVs. I was sick all night, just like I couldn't move.
Oh my God! Dude, those guys, dude,
I can get you.
Oh, those guys, dude, those Smoilovs and Smedins are one of my favorite teams, man. It's just look at Giannis Smedins. I mean, that guy is just a cannon.
Incredible.
How did two guys? I mean, what would you say Alex's real height is? Probably 6'3", 6'4". 6'4" is pretty legit for him, and Giannis is probably 6'2", 6'3", right?
Yeah, he's listed 6'4".
Yeah, well, yeah.
I don't know what his real height is.
So the point is, like, if guys at that size in the last 6 years can be at the top of the World Tour pretty consistently, it's possible. You don't have to be Oleg, right, to win.
Dude, this is like, you're warming my heart. I just watched Samoilov Smedins and Herrera Gavira, and I'm like, I can do it. I can do it.
And try to remember Zandy Huber playing with Rob Seidel, right? Dude, those guys are the coolest guys ever. I love. Oh my God! Yeah, go ahead, dude.
No, we called him the Hobbit.
The Hobbit, Zandy, right, dude? And he's still at it. He's playing with Dressler in a lot of like 1 and 2 stars and local events, and still trying to grind it.
Yeah.
But that guy, they were so cool. I would cheer for them because when you see, like, for anyone who's watching the podcast, Zandy Huber is like legit 5'7", right? I mean 5'8" maybe, and Rob Seidel is like 6'1"-ish, 6'2" maybe on a good day. And that was a team that in that might have been in that opening event in 2013 in Fuzhou. They beat 3 straight teams that was like huge upsets. They beat Todd Rogers and Avatar. They beat Jake and Casey. And I know they beat one other really good team in a row. Like, it was like weird. This 5'7" guy was like digging everybody, and the 6'1" guy just soft blocking. Like, he wouldn't ever get any jetties. He would just soft block anything, and they would just play it up on 2. So like, that's cool that you can be small and compete if you have the skill, right? And it kind of gives, because there's, right, the old school guys are still going to always harp on what if it was still big court. And I say to that the players of today are so freaking good, it would not matter at all. They're bigger, quicker, they jump higher. I mean, I'm not saying that the guys back then weren't amazing. They were, but when Mike Whitmarsh was like 6'6.5", and he was the biggest guy anyone had ever seen. Right. So Phil, Jake, guys like that, it would transition across any era for sure.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think the argument I think is kind of stupid across all sports, because you grow pretty much to, like, you know how like a fish will grow to the size of its container.
yeah.
Right? So like athletes will just grow to whatever level of competition, whatever size court they need to go to.
Yeah.
So we shrink the court, and what happens? The blockers get freaking huge.
Yeah.
They don't have to be as mobile as Randy was,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
And if you make the court bigger, right? I have a feeling that Bill is going to be just fine on big court
yeah.
if that's all he trained on. You know,
Yeah.
what were we saying, Try?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The whole thing. Watch the old 80s and 90s matches. Guys have to set each other 5 feet away from the net typically, or that's what they're doing, right? They're hitting deep corners. That's great and everything. That set doesn't work in today's game.
Yeah.
Try setting your partner 5 to 7 feet away from the net and see how well they side out with that smaller court. And it just won't. With the quickness of defenders, it's just, you can't hit the same angles, the same crisp cut shots. Like, it's just not going to be as effective. So I think in a way, certain parts of the game have been elevated. The precision of the passing and setting now is beyond my comprehension at times. I look at the way guys set, like even like average to bad passes, and it's ridiculous. And I love the drill you guys do out front when there's like a drill where you're like simulating out of system balls and having people set. And it's so incredible to watch, just set after set after set, 2 to 3 feet off, perfect height. Because players of today train specific skills religiously, right? Players of that era just played games all day. And if it so happened that they wanted to work on a high line shot, maybe they would just hit a whole bunch of high line shots while they're playing games. And there's arguments to be made for probably either style, but I think today's style certainly is an advancement in the quality, right, of the skill at a faster rate than you would get just playing games. Of course, guys will say, well, back in our day, we played 4 or 5 matches every day. And I'm like, so the problem with that is, then what you're waiting for people to pass out and get exhausted, or you're like waiting for the guy who can barely jump anymore to like poke balls over, because it's not as fun for the fans, I don't think, at that point. I like today's game better in that way.
I think like my favorite.
And it's a matter of knowledge too.
Go ahead, Try.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm on a delay here. I can tell.
Tiny
My
bit.
Wi-Fi is terrible. But I was just saying it's a matter of knowledge as well. Like, you're growing up watching the game be played at a certain level. That then becomes the bar, and the next generation is going to push that bar. Like, there's no way point guards are going to come out anymore and not be able to shoot 4 feet behind the 3-point line because they grew up watching Steph Curry. So the bar, you just start from a higher level. Every generation will always be better than the previous, especially if players are sharing their knowledge, which they are, with their teammates and sometimes even with everybody. You can't really compare generations.
And look at this new thing that's happening with the jump setting, 2-ball, like fake 2-balls. It's amazing. I want to say, did the Polish guys kind of start that? Do you think Ken or Loziak were kind of the first try?
It's not a matter, like, they definitely didn't start it. Like,
okay.
I mean, I've been doing that since I was a kid for fun,
Nice,
but like,
nice.
who started training it and implementing it into their system to where it was a high percentage play? That's the thing. Like, a lot of people will do it, but they're actually taking the percentages out of their favor most of the time because it's way harder to pass like that and to set like that. But they actually started implementing it into their system to where the fans could see it, like, this is what they do, and like, you have to game plan against it. So yeah, in that sense, I think so. But
so there's your bar raiser, right? Like, guys weren't even now, even like Chase Budinger is starting to practice his fake 2 jump setting, which is great. Guys like that who, it wasn't in his repertoire at all for the last several years, but he's thinking, you know what, I need to start working on this. So your bar is raising constantly, right, throughout history.
Yeah, and you watch like these Swedish kids that are actually 1 spot ahead of me and Adam in Doha. So their names are Aman and Helvig, and they're like, I think that they're going to be not Anders and Christian level, but they're 18 years old and they can compete with basically anyone outside of maybe the top 5 or 6 teams in the world.
Wow.
And so they did the European training camp in Tenerife, Spain, and they're battling with like Brouwer Musin, Adrian and Enrico, Smoilov Smedens, and all those guys, and they're running this insane option attack offense where the left sider will pass, so the right sider is a righty, and he'll go up and then he'll side jump set it like that to a shoot set to the other pin. And now they're running the cut sets that Adrian's been doing.
Oh yeah.
And it's crazy. So I think if you're a beach volleyball fan, like those two kids are two names that you should be watching because they're fun and they're just like these really happy dudes. And they had a terrible draw in the China tournament that I saw them play. They drew this like Russian team that cut third.
Oh.
I think it was like Igor Velichko who was in the qual.
Oh yeah, that guy's nasty.
Like, nasty. But yeah,
that's nasty.
You can see like this young generation, and for the Americans, like Miles Partain doing all the exact same things.
God, yeah.
And getting funky. So
he's gonna be. I mean, it's really interesting. Like that, his technique. It's like, okay, so look at volleyball players from 20 or 30 years ago. They started playing volleyball maybe when they were 14 or something, right, 16. But here in Hermosa, there's a girl who plays here who I'm really good friends with her parents. And Erin was peppering with her mom at 8. And they had a contest. How many times can we bump back and forth? And she did 1,000 without an error at 8. And so I'm thinking in my head that a lot of it too has to do with kids at a younger age being like, you know what, I love volleyball. I'm going to start playing volleyball, and that muscle memory develops so much better. And as long as you love it and you're not getting burned out, you know, like some indoor players would occasionally get burned out because the practices can be pretty intense, right? But as long as you love it and you're getting into it, that earlier, like these guys from Sweden have probably just been playing for 10 years already or whatever it is. So they have the technique of some of our 25-year-olds because they're ahead by that, and they've been training in the European, you know, system where they pull kids out of regular school and put them in sport academies.
Yeah.
I think is really sweet. If the kids are into it, that's perfect. You know, so I'm psyched, Travis. God, I'm kind of bummed that I'm not going to this one star to watch you play, buddy.
Dude, I'm wondering. I was like, man, I should have gotten Ed a coaching pass.
Dude, I would have been all over it because but they're still doing the whole bubble thing and everything, which means you can get in as a coach. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's going to be interesting this year to see how that all plays out. And like, I think in Qatar it'll work well. It sounds like Brazil Itapema try is going to happen, right? But doesn't look, Brazil's like, they've been doing bubble tournaments in their Brazil tour with no fans. It's probably gonna be the same, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
something like that.
I was talking to Pompilio. Go ahead, try.
Sorry for my delay.
You're good.
You're good, dude.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, I think Qatar is for sure going to be the easiest event to pull off just because the logistics, there's not that many people there anyway. And they can really they can close the streets if they're there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So that's probably the best place for us to play. After that, I'm not sure. Which is why I kind of wanted to hear from Ed. Like, I want to hear you break down the Olympic positions in terms of points right now.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if you have the exact
no,
in front of you,
I do. I got them in my head as well, so we'll be fine. So here's the thing. I was doing this analysis last week just because I think I bumped into you on the beach and I made some kind of false statement about you having 5 finishes you could replace easily. And I realized that, you know, you only get those 12, right? And then there's a certain number that count, you know, out 12 out of the last couple of years. And then what you want to do is look at opportunities for improvement. So, you know, with you guys, and I'll just glance at the spreadsheet just so I get all the numbers right. But with you guys at 6360, okay, with Jake and Taylor at 6680, and with Phil and Nick at 5480, those numbers probably mean nothing to anyone listening. But just thinking about it overall, you guys have 3 finishes that could be replaced by a 9th and a 4-star, meaning that if you at least get a 9th, you improve your position. Now, what's ironic about where things are, that Hamburg finish for you guys, where you got 1,120 points, is huge, by the way, as I'm sure you know, right? That 4th at World Champs means everything to you and Trevor right now because it's holding you up, right, in the spot you're in. And so what you now have to do is say, if we can just Like go to Doha and get a fifth, let's say, which would be great and is well within your capability, probably even doing better than that. But let's just use that as an example. You would gain 160 team points, right? Because each division in a 4-star is 80 points from spacing, right? So first is 800, second is 720, 640, 560, 480, 400, right? It works its way down, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, ninth. It's interesting because single elimination in FIB, it's much different. For the fans who watch ABP, you know we do double elimination tournaments. But internationally, they do a modified pool play plus a single elimination bracket. So there's more teams. There's 8 teams tied for 9th, 4 teams tied for 5th, right? Then they get a team in 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st, and that's where the really big points come out. But Phil and Nick, the way it stands right now, if there was only one tournament, let's say only Doha happened, they have one empty slot, but they're behind you guys by enough, and it's 520, that they would need at least a 4th to surpass you. But even then, a 4th with you getting a 9th, you still are ahead, right? If they get a 3rd, you would need a 5th, right? If they get a 2nd, you would need a 4th. So you can kind of do the math based on the delta, what we call delta, which means difference in algebraic terminology. You can do that. Sorry, my physics background keeps kind of making its way into my brain. But so that's interesting. Now you say, okay, why haven't I mentioned Jake and Taylor at all yet? They have the highest average point finish right now, and they have 2 replaceable finishes. So I'm just gonna sort of go through this in a little more detail. Try and Trevor, Rome, 5-star, obviously we don't want to talk about. And Stad wasn't great for you guys. And weirdly enough, Warsaw wasn't great for you guys. So, but that's still okay because, you have a chance to improve those finishes still, which is why it was important for you guys to go to everything you could go to in 2019. And I'm not in charge of anybody or anything, but it definitely hurt Nick and Phil to miss some tournaments, right? For a few different reasons. I mean, you think, everyone thought 2020 was going to have that full complement of tournaments leading up to the Olympics, but it didn't. So now they're stuck with not knowing how many tournaments are left, still having to fill that one slot. They, by the way, also had a bad Warsaw in 2019. They had a really bad Espino and Shaman. They had 2 25ths in 4-stars, which is like for Phil and Nick, I don't think Phil's almost never had a 25th in his career, by the way. And we were talking about how last year was a tough year for USA. For Phil to get a 25th is almost like, it's like, I must be dreaming, right? I mean, it's like, come on, Phil but so that's where this conversation starts to change as more tournaments occur. Because if there's 3 tournaments, let's say, now Phil and Nick get 1 freebie and they're placed 2 25ths. Now the pressure's really on you guys and Jake and Taylor either way, because you have 3 sort of reasonably easy to replace tournaments. Jake and Taylor only have 2, and it's funny because they went out to a 3-star and got a 5th, which you think, oh, that sounds pretty good, but that's the same points as essentially as a 17th in a 4-star.
Jeez.
So you're kind of, you think I'm going to go to a 3-star like Try and Trevor and I'm going to win it because you guys did, and that was helpful. But when they didn't, when they end up with a 5th, it actually could end up being painful for them. So at the end of the day, I think just playing every tournament is always a good thing. But now that we kind of know where everyone's at, it's going to be a dogfight, man. I mean, it's just gnarly. Like to think about if there's at 3 tournaments, right? Then you just have to focus on each match as if it's the last one you're ever going to play, right? Because any little letdown in a match where that slips you in could, it's kind of what happened to Furby and in that old race, how Rosie and Jake got into that first one. So anyway, I'm thinking that it's all 3 of you have a pretty fair chance to get in, just depending on performance, right? And we'll see what happens. I don't think any other country's in this situation, by the way. Because Brazilians, Alvaro and Alisson and Evandro Bruno look like they're pretty much in, right? Andre and George don't really have much.
Well,
of a chance.
Brazil does their thing differently. So they're
That's right.
they're done. They're
They already picked him, right?
yeah, they picked him.
Yeah, they
So-
already picked those guys.
so
Yeah. Okay.
all those Brazilian teams have to do now is stay in the top 16 in the world, maybe top
Yeah.
24, and they're
That's
good.
right.
So Brazilian Federation does it a little bit different than the US. So Try right now wishes that we were doing it like Brazil.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's right.
I don't think people realize how nice that would be. Not just saying because I'm in that position right now, but like you could be sitting on all your sponsor calls being like, hey, we're the team. You can get on board with us.
Yeah.
You know what's going to happen. You know, you're building your brand. And like, instead it's like, we're not sure, you know, like there's so much on the line here besides, you know, I mean, lifelong dream, the Olympics, but you have that label of being an Olympian for
He'll come back.
He'll come back.
Yeah, that's the thing. Tries just hitting on it. Look at the Olympians in the U.S. in the volleyball world, the beach world. Like Dane Blanton and Eric Van Moana have gotten incredibly successful careers based on their gold medals, right? Yeah. And they were really amazing volleyball players, but neither one of them was the most winning of their era. Yeah. But that gold medal changes everything.
Yeah.
Right. And even just being an Olympian, look at some of our Olympians, you know, Jake, Casey Patterson, Rosie, who have all utilized that to sponsorship, right? Improvements. Hey, Try.
But I think one of the things, and I don't know where you cut off Try, but that's what Misty and Carrie, what they would do is front load their schedule, get enough points so they're basically assured to be in. And what that did, aside from the sponsor perspective, we're like, hey, we're in the Olympics. What they could do then was just modify their training so they're not killing themselves in the 3-4 months leading up to the Olympics. They're saying, actually, we're going to pick and choose our events. We're going to train to peak at the exact time we need to, instead of like running on fumes. And sometimes that works. Like if you look at in 2008, Marcio and Fabio were chronologically the last team to get into the Olympics, and they were like limping their way in, but then they got in. So the pressure was completely off, and they ended up taking a silver medal, almost beating Phil and Todd for gold. So everything's different. But I think that if we were to adopt a system similar to Brazil, it would be much easier for like you and Trevor right now. You could plan out your training schedule to peak exactly when you want to, which is a luxury that Mel and Pavin have right now after winning world champs. They know they're in. So they're like, you know what, we might not go to Doha because we don't have to. We might just train and stay healthy, you know?
I think, and it's interesting, I thought the Doha cutoff already happened, but I was looking on the paperwork and whatnot information. It looks like it's not till this Sunday now. So the lists are not finalized. According to USA Volleyball, sent out something about February 8th, because it's 30 days before the start of the tournament on March 8th. So maybe not everyone's on. You know, I'm sure you guys have been checking out the entry list. Like Oleg is signed up, but Norway's not, right? So Russia's there, Norway's not. The best German team's not yet signed up. Maybe they won't go. The gals from Latvia were out front training because I guess they're here for a training camp, probably because Tina, you know, with USC and everything.
Yeah.
And they said they're going, but they're not on the entry list right now.
Okay.
So who knows if they decided to change their mind or if that just hasn't finalized yet.
Yeah.
So I think there's another interesting aspect to this for American fans to think about, which is this country quota idea, right? Some of the American fans might be wondering, because I see this question coming up on forums sometimes, like, are they doing country quotas locally or far away? What's the date? This one in particular is going to be on the 18th of February. So it's 2 weeks from Thursday. And the guys and gals getting ready for it, there's one caveat, right? And Try, you probably have never had to worry about this, but if you don't have enough points to be in the qualifier, you can't play in the country quota.
Yeah.
We allow 6 teams to technically sign up, right? I try, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 6, 3 typically are in, and then 3 are typically playing that country quota for one last spot, because a country can have a maximum of 4 teams in a tournament. And so, other than the host country, of course. And so what's interesting is watch out for this country quota for men, because I know now that Billy signed up with Andy Benish, but Andy's got no points, right? So Billy Allen and Andy probably won't even be able to enter the country quota. Theo and Kame are playing together, which to me sounds like a fantastic team, right? I mean, they complement each other well. They play the correct sides. They have the right skills. everything's great, but they don't have a lot of points. They only have 960. And there's about 60 FIV teams that have 1,000 points or more. But if everyone doesn't sign up, they could be allowed to play in that country quota, which would be really, really good for them.
Yeah.
And then you've got Billy Klinsky and Miles Evans who have enough points and will be in that country quota. And then you've got Chase and Casey who will be in that country quota. So that country quota, those matches will happen, are going to be at a very high level to determine if the one spot to go to the qualifier in Qatar, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I love that whole interplay as well. Hopefully, Travis, you'll be building up some points, getting into that picture.
Getting there. Yeah, I'm one spot behind Kalinsky. So
oh wow.
Yeah. So
oh wow.
If me and Adam do well at this 1 star, I could get close to having like 400 points for me.
Oh, that'd be great.
So that's the plan.
Yeah, and then next year with this new system of potentially having roughly 12 high-level events, 12 mid-level events, and 12 lower-tiered events, something like that is what the FIB has been floating from what I understand. And that could be really interesting because then guys can go to the lower tier, and if you consistently win there, you get moved up.
Yeah.
Then you can make more money, do better, and then you can move into that top tier. Apparently, there is some kind of negotiation with certain teams being exempt from dropping down. Because if you do poorly a lot, you get dropped down to the lower tier.
Right.
So this is what, and this is not coming from, this is like third hand, like information, right? A guy told a guy who told a guy who told me. But, I think it's interesting to think about because the star system, I think, has not worked in the favor of the players. Maybe it's grown the game because there's been 40 plus events if you include 1 and 2 stars, right? In a year. But for you guys as players, not having those Grand Slams like you had with John Hyden, right? Those Grand Slams were amazing for money, right? That 2013 to 16 quad try, did you feel that was much better than this current system? Let's see if he gets the question. It's a delay. Sorry, Chai.
Say it again. Sorry.
Yeah, with the Grand Slam system in 2013 to 16, do you feel like that was a lot better for you guys than this star system was?
Oh my God, I had it so good. I just want to play a chunk of high level games, and yes, I'm also saying I want high money.
Yeah.
But like, just don't send me overseas for a 3-star if I'm at the 5-star level. If I drop to the 3-star level, I got to play in 3 stars, but quit sending me overseas for 3 stars just because it's for Olympic points.
That's right.
I just don't like that at all.
That's right. It's simple, right? Is that athletes should be competing for a fair amount of money. The points should be secondary at a certain level. Unfortunately, it's the other way around, and you guys as players are scrambling to make a living because the money in the FIV has diluted now. A lot of that had to do with Red Bull's issues, and Hannes obviously is not involved anymore as far as I know. So I think if that investment, or if the FIVB, who sounds like they've put out press releases to say they're kind of building their 3 sort of funding sources for the beach tournaments now, it's sort of a third. It used to be a half or something like that. So it might allow for the local promoters to be able to do higher start events or higher level events, whatever they're going to call them next year, and still have enough support from the FIB to provide good prize money. Because as soon as you told, random country X, you can throw a 3-star tournament, and guess what? All the good players are probably going to have to go because they need Olympic points, and you're not going to have to give much money. And you still get all that press and notoriety, and your local teams still get to all the free main draw spots, right? So it's interesting how that seems like one of the biggest motivators for these small countries to host tournaments. Well, all we really care about is our local media saying, hey, these guys from Gambia played in the Gambia 1-star last week. They don't really care if America sends good teams.
Right.
And they don't really care if there's not more than $1,000 if you win the thing, right? But it's kind of skewed the international game, unfortunately, in my opinion, just to not promote the high-level players to the sport that they need to make a living. I mean, I don't think, it's hard to understand. And so what I loved about traveling the world with some of the guys is to learn what you guys go through to do this passion of volleyball. For very few players is this a true, like life-changing in terms of economic experience, that you can actually support yourself long-term. Season to season is one thing, and that's good enough, I guess, for most people, but only maybe a Phil or a couple other people have done well enough where they can say, I can retire now, right? Yeah. But yet most other athletes in America in most major sports are way beyond that. Yeah. So I wish we could get a little closer to that. I don't know if the AVP is going to get there. I don't know if international is going to help it get there, but it's a shame for us fans who love seeing these amazing players, right? We don't want guys to quit, right? We don't want Stafford to say, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to San Diego to get this medical sales job. That guy's a freaking badass. Stafford Slick is 6'8". He jumps high. He's got amazing hands. He rips his jump serve. He bounces the shit out of balls. He's amazing to watch. He's got a great personality you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like Stafford's one of the best people to watch in volleyball and a very successful player. And he just gave it up where he probably had 5 or 6 good years left. Right. So that's what I'm concerned about, is how our sport can survive if players are just bailing when they're in the prime of their career. Yeah. Well, hopefully this new international investment will do some good for it. But Ed, it's been a pleasure. So we usually try to cut it off at around an hour, and I have to go coach. Yeah, right on, dude. No, I'm stoked. We will have to have you on like regularly, because this has been an absolute pleasure. I love seeing you every morning on 16th. It's a highlight of my day every day. Oh, appreciate it, brother. You're amazing. And I've always said this too, Travis. You and Delaney are the coolest couple on the beach, that besides Try and Gabby, of course. But right. All you guys, I think that's the thing I want to finish with, is just how welcoming the volleyball community is, how incredibly friendly the players are. If you are a fan out there and you're watching this, just go up and say hi to one of the players that you admire or that you'd like to, get to know, and just have a chat with them. Because I that's the thing I love the most about this sport, is that the players are some of the nicest, most amazing people I've ever met anywhere. And, they are is positive and hardworking and looking to, to advance the sport in a positive way. And so from my perspective, that's made all the difference, from just being friends with Rosie. And a funny one, like I remember I speak a little Russian. So I was at a tournament once, and I was trying to talk to some of the Russian guys, and they just wouldn't even say hi. They hated the fact that I was trying to talk to them in Russian. Yeah. And Rosie brings one of them over and goes, no, this is my buddy Ed. He's cool. Like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden it was all good, and we were all hanging out. But that's not really the point of my story. But the point is that it's not a very large community in beach volleyball, right? There's only so many professional players, coaches, and people who are involved in the sport. And so I think we all make an effort to be very, very positive with each other and be very good to each other, because, at the end of the day, that's what we have is those friendships in that community. So yeah, that's kind of what I'd like to leave with. And it's been a blessing for me to be involved in this and have friendships with guys like you guys, because, here I am, just a kid from Boston. I was going to pull out, sorry, I'm just pushing you for a few extra minutes here, Travis, but I was going to pull out one of my old volleyball magazines. I still have a volleyball magazine from 1992, the first one I ever got. And it says on the front of it, The Rise and Fall of Scott Akatubby. Yeah. Because, the guy who owned the court in front of the house I live in now. But it's just thinking about where I came from, where I idolized you guys and read volleyball magazines. In my wildest dreams, I never thought I would be hanging out with professional volleyball players when I was a teenager and falling in love with the sport. So I'm just super thankful. That's all. Yeah. We're grateful for you, and we need more fans like Ed Keller in the sport. That's for sure. Right on. Well, thanks again, Travis. Thanks, Try. Have a great afternoon. Have good luck coaching. I'll see you on the beach soon. Thanks, Eddie. I'll probably see you tomorrow. Yeah, most likely. All right, gentlemen. Shoots, bud. Bye-bye.